Okay, welcome back. It's the daily video. Let's start it off with a look through. We actually have played some friendlies and stuff, but we'll cover that off when we do the match videos. So, first things first. Let's have a look at the scouted players for today. So, we'll just go through them. The financial situation is that we basically just don't have any money at this point. And we're got about $500,000 more in wages than we should have. So at this point, really, some things to fix up here. Any high wage players are, for the right player, you always make an exception, I suppose, but it's pretty unlikely that player is going to come up, basically. So I think the general thinking here is that that sort of 250k wage rule we were talking about the other day, that's sort of around the target wages that we should be looking for each player. It could be a little bit more or whatever, but the higher it goes above that, the better and better the player needs to be. And also, it's going to typically mean younger players. Obviously, one of two things needs to happen at this point, because we don't have any money. If we want to buy a player as well, they're going to have to sell some other players, which... sorry, we forgot the very first step, which is to check the transfer bids. Okay, there are none for today. So... that's the auctions. Scouted players. Right, so... the other obvious thing we can do, which is probably, like, from an optimal gameplay perspective, is what we should be doing. It kind of depends if we find... It depends what they cost. If they cost a little bit of money, maybe we can just find that. But if they cost a significant amount of money, what we probably need to do is play these 6 matches today, so that we get the £5 million cash injection and then buy the player with that money. But let's just have a look. We'll worry about that as and when we find the player. If we find the player, as we go through this process, and now we're putting more and more requirements, because not only do we need players that are fit our tactic, fit the roles, the attributes, and this and that. Like, now we also want low wages, and we also want them to be younger, and as we're piling on the requirements, it is going to become harder. Like, less and less likely we find players each day. I think when we were also recruiting for the youth team as well, like, it'll be easier. But then the issue that we can't really do that too much at the moment because we don't have the money. So yeah. So for now, we're getting pretty picky with things, which also means as well, like, when we do find the right player, that does sort of meet all those requirements, like, we seriously kind of always have to consider buying them, I think, because it's quite unlikely we'll come across them. So let's go. Right, so it's definitely a massive upgrade for our youth keeper, but again, we just don't have any real budget there's no money, basically, to be improving our youth squad at this point. No. Again, like, arguably for our youth team, but again, we just don't have any budget for that, so just too old and whatever. This is kind of like, yeah, just too old, basically. Too high wages, too old. Again, like, we could consider him, maybe, but again, just, like, too high wages, basically. And this is a guy that maybe you're saying he's kind of like, I think the tackling is alright or whatever, but he is not fast. He's good in the air. Like, he's got strengths and weaknesses. He's the type of player we could use. And if his wages were like 150k, then we could consider him, maybe. And even then, he's a bit on the old side for our timeline. So, but anyway, his wages aren't that. Like, his wages are basically, like, more than double what we're looking to pay per position. So there's nowhere near, like, good enough to say that he's twice as good as the type of player we need to be looking for. So we'll move on. This guy, just tackling not high enough. This guy, right, so he is ticking boxes all over the place here all of a sudden. So a lot of the stuff that So what role can he... We've got 3 central defender roles. So... We have one where we care about primarily speed and aerial ability. So he can definitely do that one. We have one where we don't particularly care about much except tackling. And it's high enough for that. Ideally it would be higher for that one. But he's young and might get... Let's check his training boosts. Right, so... +4 tackling coming up. What else? An extra mark. So obviously we're going to pick this side if we pick it. So let's just look what that side has. 2 control, and it's already quite high. So that's... Well, it's a thing. It's a consideration. It's, particularly for the centermost, the cover role. That does help a bit. So... The marking, sure, it's not great. It's not a weakness per se, but it's not great. It is a factor for that. It's more central for 2 of the roles, and definitely the more central role. So he can definitely basically play the DLC role because we care about the speed and agility and just want sort of good enough marking and good enough tackling. And I think on the whole, considering he's young and can improve, he can definitely do the DLC. The right side of one, we just want, and at the end of the day, it'll be 78 after this, so he can do the right side role. And then the cover role, we primarily care about... What do we care about for that one? Like I said, the control matters a little bit for that one. But for that one, we care about aerial ability, speed a lot, aerial ability quite a bit, tackling a lot, marking quite a lot, positioning, yeah. So for that one, he's not great at the moment, but he's also young. And his sort of things that he is a bit weaker in, and the composure, we care about for that one a bit. The things that we care about the most he has, and the things we care about quite a bit, and the passing and the vision matters more for that one. So he's not perfectly well suited for that one, but the thing is, a lot of this stuff, the marking, the positioning, the composure, a lot of that stuff could improve. Even now you're seeing the composure is going to go up, the marking is going to go up. So he might be able to grow into that role. It's pretty obvious. We need to... Let's go back. Sorry. So what was his wage demand and stuff? Because it wasn't high. I remember. That's why I noticed him straight away. But what was it exactly? So 300. So that's fine. We're looking for 250, and he's clearly like going to be a cut above the average here. So that's fine. The buy price is high for us. But even just if you're sort of projecting this out over 3 seasons, if you're talking about like 600 to 700k wages versus 300, that's 300 to 400 a season. So even just after 3 seasons, at 300 to 400k extra wages, you're sort of talking like $1 million extra just for that. And then this does feel like the kind of guy that we could keep longer than that, although he would need contract extensions at that point. But also feels like if we develop him up, pick the right boosts, the training options or whatever, give him lots of points. He's got 69 ceiling here as well. You can get an idea about how high that loosely is by if we just sort by other 23-year-olds. 69 is high for a 23-year-old. So 63 and 60. Basically, there's a lot of room for growth for the attributes. So there's a lot of scope to improve him. If we just go to... another thing we can do is go to the player auctions, which are the better players, and just get another loose idea here. So if we sort by here and go to the 23-year-olds here. So even for these players, you can see here, these players are worth a lot of money. So they're definitely like, let's say, a cut above what we're looking at here. But you can sort of see that 69 is like in the ballpark of these guys, if you know what I mean. So like this guy 71, that's obviously high, 72 obviously high, 70 high, 72 high. But this guy, for example, 65, 68. So like, I don't know, this guy's 65. So he's definitely like, he's in the ballpark. I'd say almost sitting exactly in the average of this sort of range. So these guys are like, what are their range? Their overalls are ranging between, they're high, but that's why their wages are higher, right? So all I'm really saying is that There's definitely big scope for growth, which is good because he could turn into a really good player. And what am I doing? Scouter players. Let's go back. There's just a lot of scope for growth, which is good on two fronts. So one front, like, he could just be turned into a really, really good player for us. It's pretty obvious, at least with our current tactic, that he can do to a really high standard 2 of our 3 central defender roles, and even at present the other one he can do to a good standard for us, and maybe longer term he won't be able to get the attributes needed to do that one, but I think being able to service 2 of the roles to a high standard and one of them as a stopgap if needed, that's fine for us. Like a player that can play 2 of our 11 positions to a high standard on our team, and a third one to do a job, like that's more than enough, basically. So, like even just one role to a high standard is enough. So 2 is more than enough. So, kind of, to be honest, I just really like this guy. The issue is we don't have the £2 million, and it's quite a bit, to be honest, because even we saying we can rush to play the matches to get the cash injection, but then we're kind of blowing half of that cash injection just to get this guy. There may be another guy that's also kind of awesome that, you know, it's always possible that another guy like this or even better than this can come up tomorrow or the next day sort of thing. There is still 3 days, 18 hours, so we've got like 3 more scouting pools. But we would still have half of the cash injection left if we bought that guy for those 3. Just have to try to get a feel for how likely it is to. Alright, so at this point, I think let's not get too carried away for now. Let's just look through the rest of the list. But basically, there's a bit of an issue here with the buy price. It's I wouldn't say it's like too high for the player or anything like that. I think it's still good value at that price under normal circumstances, but we don't have any money, so it's high for us, let's say. So I don't really have an issue with saying that the price is too high or anything. I definitely think even at this price, like we're saying after 3 seasons, this season's partway through, so, you know, it's not 300k wages for this season, but it's like 160, 170 or something for the rest of the season, and then another 600 for the next 2. So it's like 770. So and then 2 over. So basically, the full financial outlay to get this guy for the rest of the season, and 2 more, is going to end up being about 3 million. And I think there's like huge scope that one, we probably want to keep this guy longer term anyway. And even if we didn't, I do think we're getting that 3 million back pretty much, just because of the amount of growth that we're going to get. Like, even if we don't end up getting the exact attributes we personally want to boost this guy up, we will generally be able to develop him as a generally better centre half across the board sort of thing to get his value up to some amount. I'm not sure to what amount, but I'm fairly confident that we'll end up being able to sell him for like at least around 3 million. Thing is, there's only so many guys. Like, you don't really. I'm not saying we should be buying this player from the perspective of trying to make some money here. By the way, like, we can't tie up all of our resources buying players trying to make a bit of money in 3 seasons. I'm just sort of saying, like, it's good to approach these things from multiple angles, because obviously, like, we want to be buying players to use them. That's got to be the primary function always at this point. But if you have the secondary bonus that every player you're buying, like, let's say every player you buy, is going at this point for us, like, they're all younger and we can develop them up and we pay whatever we pay or whatever, but we get all of that use out of them. And then also when we go to sell them at whatever point in the future, we're kind of getting our money back and maybe making some extra money back, or at least not losing that much money. Like, if that is a general concept that we apply through to every player in our whole entire team, it's going to make it so that we can kind of, like, I don't know if snowball is the right word, but we can kind of, like, we have much stronger cash flow, which allows us to well, when we're in a high division and maybe a few seasons time when all of this starts to be a thing, because I keep saying in 3 seasons time, like in this season and 2 more, this season and 2 more. Well, when it is the rest of this season and 2 more, at that point, we might be looking to try to pick up a player from the auctions list, and we might need to be able to, need to stump up amounts like 10 million or more for a player, and being able to effectively have a couple of players that have fallen out of the rotation, but we can sell those players for like 2, 3, 4, 5 million each. Basically, it's better in a couple seasons that our squad can kind of be turned into a whole bunch of cash than it is kind of all just ends up being worth nothing or much less, and with like paying loads of money in wages and stuff in the meantime, obviously. So I'm just trying to say, like, this player fits well with that. I'm not saying that we should tie up this £2 million and all of this wages and squad spot and everything for 3 seasons to try and make £1 million or whatever profit or more or whatever, but like that doesn't make any sense at this point. Like, it's too much resources tied up to get too little return. So it only makes sense if we're going to use the guy and he's going to help us a lot, but he is. So anyway, let's move on. Let's move through, because maybe, who knows, maybe there's an even better centre half here. Doubt it, but let's see. Alright, no. Right. I mean, certainly for our U squad, he'd be a big upgrade. I keep saying we can't really invest in players for that, but he could be. He's clearly not as good as the other guy. He's 4 years younger. I'm looking at this a little bit from like, can he do a job now? And can we do, like, let's check the training options. So, right, +4 tackling or +3. So either could be a choice. Passing, crossing here, doesn't matter. Control, positioning +3. Right, so we're going to go this side, so we're going to get the 4 extra tackling, so it'll now be 73, which is pretty good for a 19-year-old. 2 more passing, and it's already quite high. So he could be turning into a DC longer term with this passing and vision for the more central role. So we would be looking for well-rounded, so passing, vision, marking. He could end up with that eventually. The composure. So on this boost, it's not high, but that could go up over time. Ideally, he's going to be faster. He needs to be faster for that role, though. And that's not guaranteed to happen. So we'd have to buy this guy knowing that it's a gamble, that he could end up fast enough. As for the other roles, the one on the left we want speed for that as well, and aerial ability. So it's still a gamble on the speed for that. So the one that we don't care about the speed too much is the one where we mostly just care about the tackling. He could end up with high enough tackling for that. And the speed for that one doesn't matter too much. So even at this level, it's, it could be okay. I think we'd have to buy him. And being okay with the fact that he may not get faster than this, or at least much faster, because even from our senior team, that in order for us to be okay with that, it eliminates him from 2 of our roles. Basically the 2 that need to have faster DCs to compensate for the slower one, and he can be the slower one, but he would need to have closer to like 80 tackling. He might end up with that, but that's a gamble as well. There's a gamble involved. It's a gamble that could be worth taking, though. Like there are the other thing potentially is you could add a position to him. That would need, the only one that would realistically be is DMC, I think. I think the box-to-box midfielder, the endurance is an issue for that position. Coming off the bench to play that position, sure. I don't know if we would want... he could end up, because he's got the long shots for that. So he could be that, he could be DMC, but he would need, for both of those roles, he's going to need higher passing and vision. He is getting 2 more passing on this one. possibilities exist here. Certainly, if he was in our youth team, we wouldn't be any rush to sell him, and we want to see how he panned out. But let's see what he costs and stuff. Can't even remember, to be honest. Who was he? Was he this guy? Yeah, right. So he's enough wages that he would have to be doing a job for the senior team now. Now that job could just be off the bench, which it probably would be, and well, it'll have to be because his endurance is too low. This is a consideration here, by the way, because his endurance is low enough that it's probably never going to be high enough that he's ever going to be able to start. So he's always going to be a bench player, like first choice, and only ever starting when like because you've got injuries and stuff. His determination is pretty high, so he could develop up a bit. To be honest, like, you wouldn't need that many more points in determination and natural fitness to... I mean, we'd need quite a few, but you could get it there if we were prioritising it through the risk. But the thing is, there's only so many things we can prioritise, and we would be wanting to prioritise all these key attributes, so it's pretty unlikely we could... Well, you can prioritise everything, it's just not everything can be the top priority. I think all in all, it is a gamble for this guy to have a long-term future with the senior team. It could be a gamble just worth taking because it's not a big outlay, but it's still ultimately like $500,000 wiped off our budget. In regards to what he would basically like, we'd be thinking of him as our bench centre half, and then maybe starting when we got injuries at the moment. That's how we'd have to think of him. So we'd be comparing him to something like this guy, and he's kind of just better than this guy for our team, like because he's already got higher tackling, already got higher speed. I think the aerial ability was already higher. Yeah, the mental stuff, the positioning and marking and stuff is not there yet, but he already had higher passing and vision, so he's already basically way more useful than this guy for us. But this guy's also only on 30k wages and blah blah blah. So I think it's less about like he's clearly going to be an upgrade over what we got. Wait up, this guy's injured. Yeah, and we've been using this guy quite a bit. You can see here, and he's even an upgrade over this guy. Like realistically, I mean this guy's got the positioning and marking, but realistically, he's an upgrade for what we need from our DCs over this guy as well. So. And this guy is not going to be the player we need ever with this, like, because he's not getting any more speed. So he's basically, we're saying, in order for us to use him, if he's going to be slow, he would need to have like closer to 80 tackling, and he's just not going to get there at this age when he's only 57 now. So he's never going to. This guy's just he's better than this guy, and we're using this guy a lot. If we buy the more expensive centre half, we're probably just going to get rid of this guy who's been starting a lot and is really good, and we're just going to move on basically and just not pay these wages anymore, start saving that money, because at that point, if we buy either of those two centre halves, we're probably selling that guy. This guy here, we already picked up this guy. You can compare these guys to this guy. So this guy can't play the central role because he doesn't really have the passing and vision, and he doesn't have high enough tackling. So this guy, and we kind of did an outlay. So this guy kind of ties up the DLC role, to be honest, because he's too limited in things like the passing, the vision, the positioning. Even the marking to some degree, we don't want him in the most central role. And his tackling isn't good enough for our right side role. So this guy basically just ties up the DLC role. We can have other people that could play that role off the bench or in case he gets injured or whatever. But as a starter, we're not even considering that role. So, and the other two DCs we're starting here are both players that are like, we do want more DCs and the bench. So basically where I'm going with this is we actually only really have one central defender sorted out because all the rest of them are just temporary things. They're all like players we're not happy with, like for whatever reasons. Like they're either part of the starting squad and we just want to upgrade him, or they're this guy who we just intentionally bought as a stopgap for that cheap buy price, but knowing that we don't want to pay those wages longer term. It was just because our DCs were so bad, basically. So we need 3. We've basically got 1 starting one. We need 2 more starting ones and a substitute one. And then in addition to that, we also want the one that is the sub. You know, we want the 5th choice one as well. So I think the question is, basically at this point, the question is longer term. Shorter term, can this guy... where is he? Was it this guy? No. Is this guy. So shorter term, can this guy be one of the top 3? And I think the answer is yes. And medium term, can he be the bench? And I think the answer is yes. And longer term, can he be the 5th choice guy? And I think the answer is yes. So... Then the only question that's left really is like, are we likely to find better in the future? All things considered, like including the price and whatever. And to that one, I think the answer is not sure. Maybe. In the case of this guy, I think very unlikely. Because there is a big like this other guy could potentially be better than this guy. This guy could potentially be better than this guy. But he could potentially just not be. And he could also fall short enough that he doesn't end up particularly useful. I think if this speed just never gets beyond 53, and the tackling, it will go up now, but if it, let's say it doesn't go above 73, like, he could be okay for that 4th choice guy, 5th choice guy, whatever. But there is a decent ceiling here. Like, if this can... I mean, realistically, what are you going to expect here when he's already 19? I kind of feel like it's unrealistic, like, to expect more than, let's say, another 12 attribute points in speed. Like, if we're relying on more than that, I mean, it's unlikely we're going to get that. I mean, it's possible we'll get more, but it just feels like the most likely outcome here, like, in regards to... I mean, it's very hard to say, because it could be nothing. It could be, like, 15. If it is, like, 15, then it's, like, towards 70. That's, like, enough, let's say. But and I'm not sure enough for what. Not enough for the most central role. Not enough to cover for the slow guy, basically. So even best case scenario, you're still saying he needs to get towards 80 tackling. I don't know. It's a weird one. I don't think he's going to be good at... I think it's unlikely he'll end up good enough that we'll want him to be one of the starting players. So we'd only be buying him through the lens that he's, like, destined to be basically a 5th choice centre half. I'm not sure if we want to tie those resources up for that. I mean, there is, I guess, the side consideration that, like, realistically, he's just going to be a massive upgrade, probably over... Where is he? Over this guy as well. So he's just a massive upgrade over our current central defender for our youth team, but I'm not... So he definitely will, will play for the youth team. He'll definitely get training points and whatnot. And it is possible the tackling does get to like 80, so he could play the other role. There's possibilities there. I think it's possible. Things are possible. I just don't think it's likely that he will get to 80 tackling. Although it's certainly more likely that he'll do that than he'll get to something like 70 speed. And yeah, it's a tricky one because he has the passing and vision as well. Things are possible with this guy. I'm seriously tempted, but then it's just like, it is different. Like, this guy is just, he doesn't need anything. He has everything that we need, and then like there are some things ideally that would be stronger, but it's ideally like he's good. He's like ready right now to go. There's no risk involved. It's just sort of like how much is the upside is the question. Whereas this guy, there is a serious like risk that he just won't be good enough. He might be, he might not be. Obviously, like there's a difference in the buy price here, and he does have the lower wages. But to be honest, like I'd rather pay 300k wages for someone who is a key player and starting every single match than 190k wages for someone who's the fifth choice and a half. So that in a way, like the wages are higher, even though they're lower, sort of thing, in regards to the value from the wages. The buy price is obviously way lower. He will start for the youth team if we get him. Let's just keep looking because there might be more players yet. All right, no, not sure, but he's definitely like. If we're going to get he's worse than this guy, let's say, so that's all that really matters, because we're and ahhing over this one, so we're definitely not going to get this guy. No. Basically, as soon as I sort of see a central defender who's got like some key attribute that we care about, like tackling a lot, I'm just going to say no, basically. So just too slow for us. Too old. We're not using right backs, but if we were, maybe no. Kind of like a really good, like has a lot of strengths for our DMC role. If we didn't have one yet, we probably would just get this guy, but we do. And I don't really want. Like, he's like double the wages we're looking for, and he's so too old and stuff, so but there's a lot to like that's really high tackling, which is great for DMC. We could set him to just have that. I think the one we're using now is like 67, and his passing is kind of good enough to do link-up play. Like, ideally there would be other things like high vision or whatever, but and I quite like the strength, and he's fast enough. Ideally, like there's a bunch of idealies. Like, ideally, kind of lots of things would always be higher, but that's part of the thing. When they are, then the wages are higher as well. So, yeah, to be honest, we'd just get this guy if we didn't already, like, if we needed a DMC and we didn't have one yet, and we just get this guy, which is kind of what we were doing before, and then we'd be paying these 500,000 wages, which we want to be lower, and then we'd try and rectify that afterwards, but we already have a guy, so let's move on. No. No. Too old. I mean, the wing back. No, too old. And this guy, too old, and the higher wages. Not too old again for what we're looking for. Too high wages. So even though there's stuff that's there maybe, but it's just too high. A little bit too high wages. A little bit too old, but. I think so we got the box to box. He's not good enough for that, I don't think, because ideally it'd be more tackling, and it's not quite good enough for that. Like, he's not fantastic, and I think at 400k wages we're looking for someone who's like really good. And the other role, we're saying we want higher long shots, higher passing and vision. Yeah, I'd say just not quite in various ways, basically, for this guy. Like, he's close to things that we do need, but he's not like pushing us over the edge in various ways. Like, the wages are a bit high. He is a bit old. For the box to box, I don't think it's there. Ideally, we have more tackling. But then for the other role, like, ideally the long shot is closer to 80. Ideally, the passing and vision is much higher. It's good enough. It's probably an upgrade over the guy we're using, but the guy we're using is injured. But let's just compare to this is a guy, so he's like, he is an upgrade over this guy, but not a big enough upgrade to justify the wages and whatever. I'd rather just wait to find somebody that ticks more boxes. By ticking more boxes, I guess what I'm saying is somebody that has higher, lower wages, is a bit younger, and has ideally higher passing and vision, and ideally higher long shots. We do have to do a bit of analysis through match results to try to get a better idea about this role in particular, what it really does need. Because I think these attributes are definitely important, but to try to get a better understanding as to what is more important out of those, even just those, would be useful. And I also want to know how many headers the guy is attempting in that role, to know how much we should emphasize the aerial ability. And I just want to know, for example, how many shots the player is taking, sort of versus how much pass attempts they're doing, because their pass attempts are, if we go to the tactic, we don't have the tactic set up, but they are normally like here, attacking midfield, running into here. So basically, like a lot of their pass attempts are from an advanced position. So in other words, they've got a lot of scope to create goal scoring chances and to get those long shots. So I just want to understand exactly where the emphasis should lie for that. But wherever it does lie, this is not good enough in this guy, regardless. Like if the emphasis is on the passing, then it's not, the passing vision isn't high enough here, and the vision would be really important as well, I think. And if the long shots is where the emphasis, it's not high enough, and if all of it is important, then it's just generally not high enough. So if we were desperate, we'd get him though. But at this point, we're the opposite of desperate. We need to be really picky and choosy with our money, effectively. Right, so this guy, just way too expensive for us. This guy, the long shots isn't there for the AMC role. And then for the box to box, ideally the long shots would be high for that. But he does have the tackling. The passing and vision. The passing is probably just there. The vision, it's high enough. Let's say ideally it'll be higher, but it's high enough. Speed is high enough. You need the right amount of speed, effectively, for this guy. From the perspective of, if he's too fast, if he's like a proper sprinter, like 80 something speed, it's great. It sounds great in theory because he'll be box to box and you want to get up and back. But the thing is, when he's like super fast like that, he'll tire quickly. On the same note, you don't want the guy to actually be slow because he needs to cover a lot of ground. So I think this type of speed amount is like a good number. It's a good balance for this box to box role. He has the high aerial ability, which is something we're generally lacking across the board. We need more players that can help us on set pieces. So he ticks that box. The work rate is low. Ideally, that would be higher. And then the endurance and natural fitness is low. Not ridiculously so, but on the low side. Let's check the training options. So the natural fitness ain't going up. Here, we do get an extra passing, and a couple even more, 2 more aerial ability as well. But not a lot of development happening here, and you can see here is like, unlike the DC, who's 1 year, just 1 year younger, the ceiling is 69. I think this guy's 24, was it? And it's 61. So there's a lot of less scope for development here. And he's still 1.7 million. I think we're not going to get him. Just because He's 1.7 million. It's just a bit much for when he's got a limited upside like that. I'd rather pay the 2 million for the centre half. Let's put it that way. And we, at the end of the day, I don't think we want to pay the 2 point whatever million for the centre half and get this guy, because we'll get our 5 million cash injection, and then nearly all of it will be gone on these two guys. I definitely feel like we need some money left in case we come across a proper gem. So I think this guy's just solid. He's good. He's the type of player we'd perfectly be happy to have, but we're not sort of desperate for, let's say. He does tick boxes. I think in particular it's interesting because the aerial ability in particular definitely pushes him over. Like, it definitely is a big upside. We need that. And the fact that he sort of also does every... he ticks all the boxes enough, let's say. Like, he's good enough. Everything, it's not perfect, that's the thing, but if he was sort of perfect as the box to box, like, a lot of these would be higher, and then his wages would be crazy high. So in regards to like where the focus of his attributes is, the dribbling is low. Like, ideally again it'll be high, but it's not that big a deal that it's low for the box to box midfielder, because he's typically not carrying the ball up. He's typically like arriving later to join the attack, so he doesn't really like need to dribble that much. Ideally the marking would be higher, for example, but again he's typically like later arriving, so he typically doesn't really have marking assignments per se. He's just an extra body. He just tackles whatever. Like, he can obviously, but it's just typically. So and the high the composure is not that big a deal for him. It's sort of like that mainly impacts like critical like defending and attacking sort of moments, like close range shooting chances or whatever, or last ditch tackles in the box, that type of thing. And whilst he can be involved in those things, he's typically not, because he's typically just moving up and down the pitch. Yeah, I mean, I just think we're going to pass, just because we'll just regret it too much. There's too much scope to regret this one, because we've got 3 more days of scouting pool still. I feel like it's the type of player that... I mean, every player is unique, so if we pass on this guy, we've lost this guy, so to speak. But I feel like it's as an opportunity. Similar like opportunities that excite us, let's say, to a similar level will come up again. Maybe not in the next 3 days, but certainly throughout this month. I'm not going to... If I pass up on this DC, it's the type of thing where is he? It's the type of thing you can end up just really regretting, and still be like in 1 or 2 months' time from now thinking, oh man, we need this. We're still looking for a DC that's as good as this guy, type of thing. I feel like that's a possibility, but I think with this box-to-box midfielder, I just don't think that's a possibility. I just can't see us thinking in 3 months' time from now, like, oh man, I wish we got this guy. So probably just going to pass on him. Just again, it's just because of the money. That's the thing. He ticks the boxes otherwise. Like, the wages are what we want. Alright, let's keep looking in case there's others. So, no... I think probably, maybe, I'm looking at the attributes thinking maybe, like, there's stuff here, but then I'm looking at the buy price and it's just too much for where we're at. We just don't have money. Again, that's the problem. No. No AMLs basically, so no AMC, really high wages, so probably no on that basis, and old. High wages, old, expensive, but kind of awesome. But we're just not gonna do that kind of outlay basically. But yeah, like he would be a huge upgrade over what we're running, and he helped. Yeah, it would tick a lot of boxes if we were in a different sort of situation, like it was in the future, and you know, we were in a high division and we were wanting to push for the next level, and we needed a player to take us over the edge. Like he could potentially help with that. Like he definitely ticks a lot of boxes for what we'd want, like the really high passing and vision, and he can score to much more efficiently than what we're running in the. I'm thinking the AMC role here, our creative forward. So he's like awesome for the creative side of things. He's fast enough, fantastic in the air, like and strong enough to break tackles and stuff. The dribbling would ideally be higher, as with the flair. But on the whole, like this guy's a massive upgrade over what we're running. This guy, if we had him now, this guy would just also, like, he would create and score a bucket load of goals, basically. But it just doesn't make sense for where we're at. He's just too old. Like, even if I go now and we look, see, he's already getting worse. So there's no scope for really improvement. He will just get worse, and that'd be fine. Like I'm saying, if we were in a different place, like if we had a more rounded team and he was going to push us to the next level, it could totally be worth it just for a couple seasons to spend this money. But that's just not where we're at. So let's move on. No. I think no. He could kind of be alright or whatever, but we've kind of got better and similar age and similar wage. Like, what we got is a little bit older and a little bit higher wage, but this guy's worse. It's just not, just doesn't make sense. No, we're not using AMR. I don't think there's any role we could that makes sense for us to retrain this guy in. So no. Too old, too high wage. Too old, too high wage. Too old, too high wage. It's probably not. The striker isn't something we need now, so at this point we'd only really even look at anything that was like really young and really awesome, basically. And he's good, but not really young and not sort of like totally awesome. So yeah. And the wages are a bit high as well. And no. So in the end, excuse me for a second. So in the end, I think we're saying that box to box we're just going to pass on, and we are just left with basically probably wanting to get this this guy, which means we're going to have to play 6 matches today. Pretty much. And maybe this guy. But to be honest, we've got a bit of time to mull that one over because we're going to have to play 6 matches to get the other guy anyway. So I think we'll play the 6 matches, and we won't. We'll think about this a lot more when we're not recording, and after we play the matches and we go to buy these guys. So this will probably just be part of the video. Or maybe, yeah, I'm not sure which video it'll be, to be honest. It'll either be the video when we play the final, after we play the final 2 league matches, so find that one if you're curious for the outcome of this, or it's going to be the video immediately after that one. I would imagine they're the only 2 logical things that it's going to be in. So yeah, I'm not gonna. We've mulled over this for nearly 50 minutes now, so we're not gonna use more time on this video doing it. I need to look at things and properly yeah, I just need to you can probably just tell listening to all these thoughts, it's a little bit like back and forth kind of thing. I'm really not sure. It's a very on the fence type decision, so I just need to mull it over for a bit and just look at our tactics and stuff properly, and look at our finances a bit more, like go through our team, work out exactly like which wages we'll end up saving longer term, exactly which players we need to replace, and even if we get players, it's like I need to sort of start trying to shape up, like we lose this 600k wage, we find a cheaper way, like I need to try it sort of like, I need to sort of get to the point where I'm looking at, for our 5th choice centre half or 4th choice centre half, like what kind of wages are we looking at for that when we get down that kind of depth type of thing. I just need to think of some other factors here. So moving on. We're going to do the training options now. Obviously, we may end up buying those players, and which we normally would have done as part of this video, but obviously we can't because we don't have the money. We've got to play the matches first. So for now, I'll just move on to the training options. This is a keeper, like our starting squad keeper we're using. We bought an upgrade, but this guy was playing because of injury. So he is, is a first team player. Basically, I think it's this one. There is do you want one parrying or a swing of 3 on 1-on-1s and 1 on strength and 1 on agility? So I just think the 1 in parrying isn't worth all of that. So we're going to get that option. This guy was saying +1 in area, but 3 extra aerial ability effectively, 2 extra agility, 1 extra strength, or 2 less flair and 1 extra vision. I think it's this one. Unless his aerial ability is super low, but it isn't, it's high, so actually it becomes more important to get that extra aerial ability. Seems as is already clearly going to be one of the ones contesting in there. Even if the aerial ability was low, possibly it's this side anyway, because of this strength is kind of a bit important, and the agility is a bit important, but the flair for the box to box less so. So it's probably that side anyway. The vision is good, but probably would be this side anyway. But with a higher aerial ability, it's definitely this side. Right. So this is a youth striker that we bought. Definitely okay. So it's an interesting one. Let's look what the dribbling is. So it's already it's quite high. Right. Let's look at the boost here. I can already see this as a complicated. It feels like it's a close one, so I just want to see it all mapped out with all the attributes to see where it impacts things. So clearly he's a striker who's not lightning fast. So he's all and he's not good in the air. Clearly, basically, this guy needs to be a goal scorer for him to have a future. So the finishing becomes super important. I feel like the dribbling is a bit less important because he's not extremely fast. So he's not less important, still important. And then we're saying the control is quite poor, but either way it's going up a bit. The determination for the extra development points is, I think that's not a huge factor in this decision. The work rate, not a huge factor in this decision, and the natural fitness, not a huge factor. So I'd say these aren't the control, the crossing. So most of this isn't really much of a factor, but let's just, and then you're down to possibly saying, what would you rather, 2 extra finishing or 4 dribbling? But let's just, I think that's close. So let's just work out the rest of it and see from the rest of it alone in isolation, what has the edge here. So we're basically saying 1 extra natural fitness, and 1 extra determination, or 2 extra work rate and 1 extra control. Interestingly, the natural fitness and determination, they will both help get a little bit more development over time. He doesn't have a problem lasting matches out at the moment, so he doesn't need the natural fitness from the perspective of from that angle. He should typically, even when he starts, he should typically be able to finish matches still with he's got high enough endurance and natural fitness, so he doesn't need that to push him over the edge. So then you're left with the control and the 2 work rate. The work rate isn't particularly important. It's just going to be a poacher or something. So, and then the control, I think, spilling the ball a little bit less when he receives it for a good chance is good. I think that's ridiculously tight anyway, just from that. I don't know, you'd be there forever just about trying to decide from that. I think that's a non-factor, just about they're almost equally as good. It's very close. So then you're left with, what would you rather have, 4 dribbling or 2 extra finishing? I think it's just going to be the finishing, because he's just I think it's the finishing because of the the nature of the role that he will have, it will always be a goal. He's always going to only really have value as if he can score goals. I mean, he can be involved in the build-up with the passing and vision. But I think ultimately, even if he can be involved in build-up, even if he can do other things as well, I think the real value in this guy is always going to be in his ability to score goals. I kind of feel that way. So I feel like the extra finishing is what's needed here. It's close though. That extra 4 dribbling could really help him get to slightly better positions to score sometimes as well. So I think it is close, but I just think, especially when you consider like his long shots is poor. So typically, even if when he gets the ball, you want him ending up in the box. If he can take himself into the box with 1 or 2 dribbling touches and get a bit closer, I think it's close, to be honest. I'm on the fence. It's a tough one. It's one of the toughest type of decisions you're ever going to get, I think, with the training options. Because there is, like, yeah, it's tough and it's close. I'm really not sure. Tough decisions today. I wonder if this is going to be a trend going forwards, though. Like, maybe I'll leave it as this. I might end up changing this one as well. If I do, I'll try and put that in the same video with the outcome of those what players I buy on the transfer, because I'm going to have to go and do their training options anyway in that video. So I just need to remember that. Remember to come back to this. So I probably need to set it now to something that I'm not going to regret too much if I forget. I think this one I probably won't regret. This is the one that I'm leaning towards, and this is the one that I'm thinking maybe it should be instead. So I'll leave it as the one that I'm leaning towards. Right, and then this right back that we're probably just going to liquidate at some point because we're not running fullbacks. It was again another. We've got quite a few purchases here that shouldn't be here really, so we have got quite a bit of scope to clear some money up at some point. You get some money back as and when we need it. Basically, when we've burnt up all the cash injections and we need cash at that point, we do have options for players to sell. So, alright, so the training options: 2 extra agility, 1 extra endurance. It's clearly this side because I think everything's just higher sort of thing. So yeah, alright. Right, so they're the training options, and then the last thing is the academy trialists. I really hope this is straightforward. Apologies, somebody's using a chainsaw or angle grinder outside, so that's going to be coming through. So apologies about that. Right, so this player here, the flare, super low, but doesn't matter too much for this position, and it doesn't matter too much for the other positions we were thinking he might end up being. That's loud enough to break my concentration, that is. Right, marking, don't matter. Strength matters, but it's high enough. Speed, really slow, so at this point we only had him in because the speed was coming up soon and we just wanted to see, I think so we'll just move on from him, try and find. I'm not saying he couldn't end up being good enough, by the way. I'm just saying, like, we really want to be trying to go for youth players here that tick all the tick all the important boxes, and we'd only really consider slower players, or at least slower players that are in the in positions where the speed is important at this juncture, if like a lot more stuff was revealed and we sort of knew exactly what we were looking at here. So right, natural fitness really low. It doesn't eliminate him from contention. Probably still at this point just thinking, let's find out the aerial ability and the tackling. And then this guy, the durability, we already knew that one. That was already revealed. Right, so striker, just not probably enough between like the finishing, the long shots not being that great, the determination not being that great, the speed, like, wouldn't say he's going to be bad in the end, but at the moment it's just looking like he's just not going to be awesome. And like I'm saying, we really want to try to end up with some awesome players here, or at least we can settle. We'll be able to settle for a striker that has these type of attributes and some like really good other stuff towards the end, I feel. So let's not settle for that now. DMC are tackling too far off, but the aerial ability is good. The speed is coming up. Not that it matters too much for this position anyway. Determination is okay. Marking is poor. Positioning is poor. Passing is not too many. Yeah, just not good enough. Right. Probably just not interested in a DMR unless they're kind of just totally awesome. I think the poor tackle. This guy can't be the box to box. He can only be the one that the attacking midfielder MC. We want really high passing, vision, and long shots primarily. He does have potentially the long shots, but the passing not great. The vision is miles off knowing it. So I think we just not bother with that. Wing back, keeper. He's got really good command of area and organisation. So if you're a team that just doesn't have, that's just awesome. If you struggle to deal with set pieces, which we kind of do a bit, but so that's worth bearing in mind that this guy kind of would be awesome at dealing with set pieces. And you'll find the aerial ability out next, which is another key one for dealing with that. But we don't know anything about his shot stopping, like his ability to save shots at this point. So, and I don't know, like we're certainly not in a position where we give up a lot of like wide angled shots and a lot of long shots from front on. So the shot stopping is kind of really important for us because, in particular, like a lot of this shot, like even the speed to be able to sort of cover the ground to make the long range saves and stuff. So we care a bit about speed, like not that much, but the fact that he's slow is a factor, and we care a lot about the shot stopping stuff. And at the moment, like you don't know all the ability to recover from a shot to make double saves and stuff. So we don't. The shot stopping is a ways off. The handling is a ways off. The agility isn't even on the radar, and the parrying is good enough or whatever. But yeah. Anyway, I don't think we will consider him. But in particular, if your team is a team that really concedes a lot of goals off of set pieces, then this is exactly the type of keeper potentially that you should be considering, I guess is a point. I feel like we are conscious of the fact, generally, in every player we ever buy, that the aerial ability is always a factor. Like, we want to be able to do better on set pieces. We want to be able to do better on set pieces. So I feel like, in the end, whilst we may not be particularly strong at set pieces, let's say, I feel like in the end we're going to be at least average. Like, it's not going to be a massive problem for us, basically. I could be wrong about that, by the way, but that's my feel. No winger, winger. Right, so maybe like average revealed attribute score 38 is pretty high at this point. He's good in the air and fast. And the tackling is coming up next. The marking not particularly brilliant, but and the strength is fine. So basically, this guy is like looking like he could be pretty good. So we'll find a spot for him, I feel like. Moving on. No, we don't use right backs. No, we don't use left backs. It's an interesting one because the speed will come up and the tackling will come up. But yeah, even for us, even if these come out at like really high, we just wouldn't consider him. So let's not bother. Handling really, really good. Agility bad. Parrying good. So going back, we had this conversation before, but these three in particular sort of work as like a trio of attributes to some degree. What you don't want is low in all three. But he isn't. He's only low in one. I think in particular, like for example, if he saves a shot, the handling will sort of influence if he catches it or not. And if he spills it, if he doesn't, he'll parry it. And if he parries it, then he likely will, he'll go to ground, let's say, and the agility sort of like is how fast he sort of recovers, kind of thing. So basically, like low handling means that you parry it more often, and poor Parrying means he's going to parry it to worse places, typically speaking, which makes it more important that he recovers quickly. So I feel like, ideally, obviously, the agility would be higher as well, but it's not that big a problem that it's low. But he's also not particularly fast at all, and we just talked about how speed matters a little bit for us. And also the command of area, whilst we're sort of confident that we're not going to be like abysmal at set pieces going forwards, I'm not that confident, to be honest, that we don't need help, significant help from the keeper. So I think he's just, even though he's got nice handling and parrying, I kind of feel like we're just not going to bother trying to persist. And either way, like, the shot stopping is actually what matters most for us. So, and that's a ways off discovering that. Right, and then the AMC, we want, he is fast for that, can dribble a bit, movement, but again, we just care a lot about the long shots, the finishing, the composure, and the ability to create stuff, so that's pretty bad. And then lastly, this guy, I'm going to try and wrap this up because I'm sure that, I think it's a chainsaw, and that's going to be coming through for sure. So yeah, fullback, not interested. So out of all of that, there was that one player. Let's try and get him in. It was this DC. Right, so it could be instead of this keeper. Oh, they've just turned it off. So maybe we're not in a huge rush. So it could be this keeper. It could be this DMC. I think in particular, even though he kind of has, like, he's kind of has some clear weaknesses at this point. Basically, like, his marking's not great, he's weak, really low natural fitness. We could wait it out for the aerial ability and tackling though, because they are decisive things. It's kind of why he's in here as an option. Oh, this guy, we wanted to get rid of this guy anyway, so our choice is easy, right? And it says DC for DC, right? Okay, cool. Okay, so I think we're done here for this video. It took a while in the end, but we did get there. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one.